Hello and welcome to Geology, a channel dedicated to making concepts in biology simple, easy to understand, and interesting. So in today's video, we are going to revise the excretory system and the nervous system, and we will go through both of these in not so much details, but then to cover up the most of your board exam syllabus. This is mainly in line with the CBSE Standard 10 syllabus, but of course this can be useful also for the others. And this is at the level of, say, Standard 9th and 10th, depending on which board you are in. So let's begin. We will first look at the excretory system, and then we will go through the nervous system. All right. So yeah, and as usual, a small introduction about myself. I am Sanchita, your host today, and I'm going to share with you the knowledge which I have acquired during the last, say, 15 to 18 years that I have been teaching, and about more than 2 decades of experience in academics, where I have been involved in content development and correction of model question papers. I have authored a few study materials, and during my own school days, I have had an illustrious academic career with ranks in 2 universities, and I'm also a qualified lecturer. So having said that, I am bringing to you tried and tested methods and tried and tested ways of how to address these topics, and I'm sure you will benefit from them. So let's begin. In the excretory system, we're going to look at what is excretion, then kidney, nephron, mechanism of urine formation, and then finally dialysis and artificial kidney. So the human excretory system, first things first, what is it? So the human excretory system, see, basically whenever there is any biochemical reaction that's happening in the body, it produces harmful byproducts. It produces byproducts, some of which are used, some of which are harmful, and those harmful products need to be eliminated, because if they are there in the body, then they would become poisonous. So the process of removing these toxic wastes from the body is known as excretion. All right. So what are the major wastes? One is carbon dioxide. The second is urea. You may also say that there is waste from the food that we eat. Well, that we cover in the digestive system, wherein at the end of the alimentary canal you have the rectum, where the feces is stored, and then through the anus that is excreted. So that becomes a part of the digestive system, and hence we are not considering that here. But what we are majorly looking at here is the urea, or the excretion of urine. The carbon dioxide is excreted by lungs during the gaseous exchange, and urea, which is a waste product during protein metabolism, and then some unused proteins, etc. Those are cleared by the kidney, where the urine is formed, and then it is removed along with the urine. These are the major ones. Apart from this, you can also say that skin also acts as one of the excretory systems, because here also, along with sweat, we lose out a lot of salts and unwanted excretory products as well. But that's a minor excretory organ. So in this one, we are going to focus on the kidney. So what are the parts of the human excretory system? Of course, the first one is kidney. From the kidney arises the ureter, as we can see here. There are 2 ureters which connect to the bladder, where the urine is stored, and then that connects with the urethra, which takes the urine out of the body. So the kidneys are two in number. They are bean-shaped organs. They remove wastes, salt and all of these things. The main structural and functional unit of kidney is nephron. We will look at nephron subsequently now. And each kidney is about 13 centimeters in size. The right kidney is a little lower than the left kidney. We've just seen about ureters. Urinary bladder is stretchable. It stores the urine till the time you feel the urge to relieve yourself. And then the urethra takes the urine out of the body. Now looking at nephron. Nephron is arrived from a Greek word called nephros, which means kidney. And each nephron is about 35 to 55 millimeters in length. And there are as many as 1 million nephrons in our kidneys, each kidney. So what is its function? It excretes wastes, it maintains the pH, and it regulates the blood pressure. We will see how does that happen. Now, looking at the structure of nephron, these nephrons are present. We'll look at the structure, but then when we look at the structure of the kidney, we can see that there are two parts. One is the cortex, which is the outer part, and then there is medulla. And the nephrons are present in between the cortex and medulla. So some part of the body of the nephron is in the cortex, some part of it is in the medulla, or the inner region. Okay. Now let's look at the structure of a nephron. So nephron is basically the Bowman's capsule as well as the tubule together. So one end of this tubule is attached to the Bowman's capsule, and the other end of the tubule is attached to the collecting duct. So the Bowman's capsule has a cluster of blood capillaries inside it, which is known as the glomerulus. Glomerulus comes from a Latin word glomer, which means a ball of thread. So it's like an entangled mass of capillaries. And the glomerulus, basically it's the renal artery which comes in. It breaks down into smaller arterioles, and then that further breaks down into capillaries, which forms this entangled mass through which the filtration happens, filtration of the blood, and then it again reunites to form the renal vein. Okay. So the renal artery, now we know that any artery takes the blood away from the heart. So an artery normally carries oxygenated blood. So does renal artery. It brings in oxygenated blood, but this oxygenated blood is coming from all the other organs. So it is dirty blood. When we say dirty, it means that it contains urea and it contains other unwanted salts and other wastes. The renal vein takes back deoxygenated blood, but it is clean blood in terms of the fact that the urea, the excess salts and other waste products have been removed from this blood during its passage through the nephron. So the renal vein carries deoxygenated but clean blood, and renal artery brings in oxygenated blood but dirty blood. Okay. Now let's look at glomerulus in a little more detail. The glomerulus is the starting point is the afferent arteriole, and which brings in the blood, and then it forms the entangled mass and it takes out the blood through the efferent arteriole. Okay, so this Bowman's capsule plus the glomerulus together is known as renal corpuscle. Okay, if you find it difficult to remember which one brings in the blood and which one takes it out, let me give you a hint here. A is first, so A brings in the blood. E comes later, so E takes out the blood. Similarly, exit starts with E, so the efferent arteriole is the one which takes the blood out. Okay. Now, let's see the structure of nephron. When you are drawing the diagram of nephron in your exams, I would suggest that you start with this diagram in this way, in a very simple way as how it is drawn right now, because when you draw it this way, it gets a little confusing. So first you draw the tubule and the nephron part, and then draw the arteries. So then it will not be confusing, and you will be able to make it more clear. So let's see the part. We have already seen Bowman's capsule, which is a cup-like structure which holds the glomerulus. Then we have seen glomerulus itself, which filters the small solutes from the blood, and both of these two together is known as the renal corpuscle. Then you have the proximal convoluted tubule, where there is reabsorption of iron, water, nutrients, etc., and thus the pH of the filtrate gets adjusted. Now, why reabsorption? Because when filtration happens, the entire water and salt quantity comes into the filtrate as a glomerular filtrate. So much should not be lost from the body. It is only the excess water and the unwanted salts that needs to be excreted. So whatever is remaining and whatever is required is taken back or reabsorbed as the blood passes through the different parts of the nephron. Okay. So this portion is known as proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal because it's near to the renal corpuscle. Proximal comes from proximity, which means close by. Convoluted because this is a very entangled, crumpled kind of a mass here. So this proximal convoluted tubule lies in the cortex portion of the kidney. Then you have this further goes into the descending loop of Henle, where it allows the water to pass from the filtrate into the interstitial fluid. That means the water moves out of the descending loop of Henle and it goes into the interstitial fluid, meaning the fluid which is found in the intercellular spaces. Then you have the ascending loop of Henle. So this goes back up, and during the ascending loop of Henle, the sodium and chloride, that is the salt from the filtrate, is removed and taken into and put back into the interstitial fluid. So this is also a reason we say it handles blood pressure. So then the next part is the distal convoluted tubule. Distal means far from the Bowman's capsule. Convoluted means folded, and this convolution basically helps in increasing the overall length and thus increasing the overall surface area for the reabsorption to happen. So here there is selective secretion, which means that some unwanted salts are secreted into the urine, and some different ions are taken out of the urine so that the blood pH and the electrolyte balance is maintained. So this happens in the distal convoluted tubule. So the Henle's loop, ascending and descending put together, is known as the loop of Henle. This is present inside the medulla. So these convoluted tubules are proximal and distal are present in the cortex, while the loop of Henle is present in the medulla. So the loop of Henle, the proximal convoluted tubule and the distal convoluted tubule together, three of them are known as the renal tubule. Clear? So I guess so far it's clear. So in case you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Are you able to see the PPT fully? Can you please respond, because I'm actually seeing some error showing up here. Great. So are you able to see the PPT? Is it coming? The PPT is coming? Who is this? Just Nix? Yes. Okay. Super. Thank you so much. Great. So we can proceed. Because the last time I did a live, I got a similar error showing, and then finally when it got recorded, I could only see the audio. So when you go into the channel, you will find a video which just has the audio in it. It doesn't show the PPT at all. So I have actually added up that portion also today for all of you. Okay, now going further from nephron, nephrons are of two types. Depending on the size of the loop of Henle, we have two types of nephrons. There is a short cortical nephron, which is this one, where the loop of Henle is very short and most of the major portion of the nephron is present in the cortex region. Then the other nephron is known as the juxtamedullary nephron, because here the major portion of the loop of Henle lies in the medulla region. So this is the juxtamedullary nephron. So even the type of the filtrate and the type of the pH of the urine and concentration, etc., also varies in the two types of nephrons. Now let's look at how does urine get formed. So formation of urine has 4 steps, or 4 different things happen. First is the filtration. Now filtration happens in the glomerulus, that is the glomerular filtrate, where the blood enters into the glomerulus. There is filtration happens. The plasma-like filtrate from the blood moves out and gets collected into the Bowman's capsule, and the remaining blood flows out and then goes into the capillary, and then it returns to the heart along through the renal vein. So that is filtration. Then the next portion is the reabsorption. Reabsorption, as I said, a lot of unwanted, a lot of excess water and excess salts also get filtered out. So we need, but the body needs these substances. So these useful substances are reabsorbed and taken back from the filtrate and returned into the blood for reuse. For returning into the blood for the reuse, this substance goes into the interstitial fluid, and then from there it goes into the bloodstream. So that's a different process altogether. We can go in for that later in a separate video. But for now, the reabsorption happens wherein the excess water and required salts are taken back from the glomerular filtrate and passed on into the interstitial fluid, and then sent back to blood. Then secretion. Secretion is the tubular secretion, wherein while passing through the tubule, we have seen that in the distal convoluted tubule, there is a secretion of certain wastes which are added into the filtrate from the blood. And the final step is excretion, which is the removal of urine. Right, so this is clear. Purani has written no ma'am. What does that mean, Purani? What are you not, what is no? Are you not able to see, or are you not able to understand? What is that? You can write. If you have any doubts, or if you're not able to understand, please put in the questions and I'll go back and explain you once again. So I'll proceed for now. You type your question and send it, and I'll take it up in the end. Right. And then we are going to see dialysis. Okay. So, okay, excellent. You can see now. Great. So, dialysis. Now, dialysis is a procedure which happens, or which is used when the kidney is not functioning properly, when there is a malfunctioning of the kidney. So dialysis is an artificial way for eliminating the waste and the excess fluid from the body. So there is a dialysis machine that is used. It is a physicochemical equipment. Why we say physicochemical is because there is a physical equipment and there are chemicals which are put into it, and because of the presence of these chemicals, this cleansing action happens. Now, often there is a question that comes in exams which is on the principle of dialysis. So if you get a question asking what is the principle of dialysis, so what you need to mention is that dialysis works on the principle that small waste products in the blood will flow out of the membrane or the filter into the dialysate, and for which three processes are used: diffusion, osmosis, and ultrafiltration, where the movement of these solutes or these waste products happen across a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, so there is a dialyzer here. We'll see the process in the next slide. But basically, three things: diffusion, osmosis, ultrafiltration, wherein basically the waste products are moving across the semi-permeable membrane into the blood. Out of the blood into the dialysate. And dialysate is actually the chemical which is present inside the dialysis machine. Okay, so now how does dialysis happen? What are the steps in detail? First, it is used for patients which have who have a kidney failure or whose kidney is not functioning properly. This entire process of dialysis takes about 3 to 4 hours. So the dialysis machine has a lot of tubes, as you can see here, and these tubes are made up of semi-permeable membrane, and these tubes are dipped inside a solution which is the dialysate, and this solution has the same osmotic concentration as that of blood. Why do we need the same osmotic concentration as blood? So that the water from so that the waste and the excess water is getting to be what your blood should have. So whatever is excess, because there will be a higher concentration of waste and a lot of water in the blood, that those wastes basically, not water but rather the wastes, the waste present inside the blood of the patient will be of a higher concentration than the concentration of the dialysate, which is equal to our normal blood concentration. So these wastes will move out of their region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. So that process is known as osmosis, and that's why we're talking about diffusion, osmosis. Diffusion is also because of the gases and so on. So the waste substances diffuse out of the blood into the dialysing solution. Okay, and this solution is made up of glucose, water, and salts. So the patient's blood passes through the tubes where the excess water, nitrogenous waste, phosphates, and sulfates get removed, and then the clean blood is sent back through the veins into the body of the patient. Okay, so that's your process of dialysis. So with that, we come to an end of the first portion, which is our excretory and excretory system. So are there any questions? Yeah. Anybody has any questions? Right. So we'll carry on. We'll proceed. If you don't have any questions, Purni, just Nix. By the way, why don't you introduce yourselves? I mean, instead of calling you just Nix, what's your name? If that's not a problem for you to mention, that'll help me, call you. I'm seeing you consistently in my live sessions, and I'd like to know who you are. Yeah. What is ADH? Okay, so ADH is antidiuretic hormone. So ADH is also known as vasopressin, and it is responsible for the water balance in the body. It is also known as antidiuretic hormone, and uh, it basically helps in your management of water levels in the body. It also plays a role in thirst management. So when antidiuretic hormone is produced in the brain, it causes the kidneys to release less water, and thus the amount of urine gets decreased. So say for example, it's a very hot day and you are out on the roads and you're not carrying your water bottle. uh, you are also sweating. So what happens in those situations? Your body automatically will not have too much of urine production. That is because of this hormone called vasopressin, or antidiuretic hormone. Because this hormone will be produced in the brain, it will tell the kidneys that, hey, look, there's already water shortage, we have not drunk water, body is getting into a water conservation mode, so do not produce too much of urine. So that is what is the function of antidiuretic hormone. Clear? Shall we proceed? Yes. It is related with functioning of kidneys, right? Yes, it is related with the functioning of kidneys, as I said, because it prevents the kidney from producing more urine. It is ADH, anti-diuretic. So it's anti to the urine production. Okay, anti-diuretic hormone. Okay. So uh, the next portion, which is the revision of the nervous system. So nervous system, yeah, nerves, veins, artery. Not veins. Sorry, the nerves, the brain, the spinal cord, your entire nervous system. All of that comes in this portion now. And this was actually requested by one of the students. His name is Shahrukh. So Shahrukh, are you there in the session? If you are there, then it's for you. Mainly for you, of course, for everybody else as well, but it's on your request. Okay, so what is it? What is nervous system? So nervous system is basically a system made up of nerve cells, as simple as that. So nervous system is a system made up of nerve cells, and along with endocrine system, the nervous system is responsible for control and coordination in case of higher animals. So controlling and controlling means the different things that happen inside your body that needs to be regulated and controlled, certain actions that you do that needs to be controlled and regulated. So those things and the different coordinations between different systems in the body and different processes, all of that is taken care by the nervous system. So this also is taken care by the endocrine system. So nervous system and the endocrine system go hand in hand, and endocrine system, as we know, is responsible for the production of hormones. Okay. And the nervous system has sense organs, the 5 sense organs as well. These 5 sense organs, as we know, eyes, nose, skin, ears, tongue, they have what is known as the receptor cells. So before going further into the chapter, let's get these few terminologies clear. So these 5 sense organs have special cells which are known as receptor cells. So a receptor is a group of cells or a cell in a sense organ which is very sensitive to a particular type of stimulus. So the stimulus could be light, it could be heat, it could be pressure, it could be a smell, an aroma. So these receptor cells are sensitive to any one of these stimuli. So the receptors which is for the sight or which is sensitive to light is the photoreceptor. It is present in the eye. The olfactory receptor is present in the nose, responsible for your sense of smell. Thermoreceptors are present in your skin. So when you touch a hot or a cold object, you get to know because of the thermoreceptors. Phonoreceptors is for the ears. They are present in your ear for helping you to hear. And then gustatory receptors are the ones which are present in your taste buds in your tongue, which helps you to taste different things. So these are the receptor cells. Okay, receptor is the first part, and then the nervous system would come. And then there's one more term which you should know, which is the effector. Now, effector is the part which responds to the stimulus according to the instructions it receives from the nervous system. Okay, mainly the muscles and the glands. Say, for example, you are walking in a market and you cross a chaat shop and you get the smell of pani puri, and you just start watering. You start drooling, and there's saliva produced in your salivary glands. So the salivary gland is the effector, and the eye which saw the pani puri and the nose which smelt that aroma, those are the receptors. So the receptor is sensitive. It captures it gets activated by the stimulus. It sends the information to the brain or the spinal cord, and the response that comes from there is acted upon by the effector. In this case, it was the salivary gland. Or if you are touching a hot object and you remove your hand immediately, the muscle and the bone which helps to move your hand, they become your effectors, and your skin becomes the receptor. Okay. Now, how does the sense organ work? So, like we were just talking, the receptor receives the stimuli from the surrounding environment. This stimulus then sets off a chemical reaction. This chemical reaction converts the energy from the stimulus into an electrical signal, which is known as electrical impulse. Now, the nerves in our body, they carry the impulse from one organ to the other, to the brain. So, this impulse is actually an electrical impulse. So the energy from the stimulus gets converted into chemical energy, which then gets converted into electrical signal, and it passes on through the neurons or through the nerve as an electrical impulse or a nerve impulse. Now this electrical impulse conveys the message from the receptor to the spinal cord and the brain through the sensory nerves. So there are sensory nerves, the nerves which transmit the information from the sense organ to the brain is known as sensory nerve. And then in the brain, the relay nerve, and in the spinal cord, there are relay nerves which will, connect the sensory and the motor nerves. And the processing of the information will happen in your spinal cord or in the brain, and the response from there comes back through the motor nerves, and it goes to the effectors in the form of, again, electrical impulses. Based on what impulse is received from the brain, the effector, which is either a muscle or a gland, it responds to this electrical impulse through the motor nerves. For example, if you suddenly hear a very loud noise, your heartbeat raises up, you suddenly get scared, you get startled. So that is happening because of your adrenaline gland which releases the fight or flight hormone. So here then the gland becomes your effector, which receives the response through the motor nerves, and it immediately releases the hormone, which just shoots up into the blood, and you get this startled. You get startled. So it happens within fraction of seconds. So it's so quick. Okay, so that's how your sense organs work. So you can see it in the form of a diagram. There's a hand which is receiving some sensory endings in the skin. Then through the motor neuron, it goes to the spinal cord and then to the brain. And then from there through the, it comes back, through the sensory neuron, it goes to the brain, and then it gets processed and it comes back from the motor brain through the motor neuron, that is the upper motor neuron, and it comes back through this spinal cord and through the upper motor neuron into the hand. Okay. Now let's proceed with the next thing, which is the unit of nervous system, or your neuron. So the unit of the excretory system is the nephron, and the unit of the nervous system is the neuron. Neuron is also the largest cell in our body. It's a big and a long cell. It has a cell body. It has, the cell body here. It has dendrites, and it has a long axon. So neurons, they carry impulses in the form of electrical signals. These are known as nerve impulses or electrical impulse. So looking at the structure of the neuron, there is a cell body, which is the main body which organizes and keeps the neuron functional, and it has a nucleus which takes care of the different functions. The cell body then extends into some of these branch structures which are known as dendrites. So the dendrites are the ones which receive the signal from the other cells or from the adjacent neuron. Then there is a cell membrane which protects the cell body, and then there is axon hillock, which is the starting part of the axon, because axon is an elongated structure. So this starts or it generates the impulse in the neuron. Then there are these roads of node of Ranvier, where there is an ionic exchange which takes place. Then these blue cells are known as Schwann cells. These produce a myelin sheath. Now myelin sheath is the one which covers the axon, and it helps in protection and also in insulation. So the axon basically transfers the signal from this neuron to the next neuron, and that will happen through the axon terminal. These axon terminals are again branched, and they will connect with the next neuron. They will not touch the next neuron, but there is a small gap between two successive neurons. That gap is known as synapse, but these axon terminals will be participating in the transmission of impulse from this neuron to the next one through the junction which is known as synapse. Is it clear? Any questions? Okay. Right. Now, how many types of neurons are there? Depending on the function, there are three types of neurons: the sensory neuron, the motor neuron, and the relay neuron. It should be L here, RELAY, relay neuron. So the sensory neuron, basically, they take the information from the receptors or the sensory cells, and then they pass on the information to the central nervous system. The motor neurons, they bring the message from the central nervous system to the effectors or to the muscles or glands, and relay neurons are the ones which serve the link between the two types of the neurons. Okay. Now, what is the difference between dendrite and axon? These are questions which typically come in exams, and hence I have put them in a tabular form. You can either take screenshots of this, or this whole session will get recorded and get uploaded automatically. So you can go back and check it there and note it down as well, if in case you're not carrying a pen and paper now. So let's look at the difference. Axons and dendrites. What is axon, by the way? Sanchita ma'am, could you explain the process of how organisms move in response to stimuli, the part where they talk about muscle proteins and muscles changing shape? Yes, sure. That's going to come now. We will be covering that portion now in the next 2 or 3 slides later. Yeah. Okay. So what is a dendrite and what is an axon? Anybody? Yeah. So your dendrite is the smaller portion. If you go back and look at your diagram, dendrites are these branches near the cell body, and axon is the branches here. The longest one long branch which comes out of the cell body is known as this axon. So axon takes the information away from the cell body, whereas dendrite brings the information towards the cell body. Axon has a smooth surface. Dendrite has a rough surface because it has dendritic spines. Generally, each neuron has only one axon, but there could be many dendrites. So it is open to receiving information from various different sources, but it passes on the information only to the next relevant neuron. And then axon is covered by with a myelin sheath, whereas dendrite doesn't have any such sheath on it. And axon branches away from the cell body and dendrite branches near the cell body. These are your major differences between the dendrite and axon. So another one is main one. Dendrite receives information and axon passes on the information. Right? Okay. Now this information, when it passes, it like I said, the axon in the end does not touch the next neuron. There is a small gap in between. So two adjacent neurons do not touch each other, and this small gap between the two neurons is known as the synapse. Okay. And in this synapse, since the two neurons are not touching each other, how will the information get processed? How will the information get transferred from one neuron to the other when they are not touching? That is with the help of some chemicals which are known as neurotransmitters. Okay. So these chemicals out here. So through the neurotransmitters, the information from the first neuron travels, it goes to the next neuron, which has the receptors here which receive these neurotransmitters. And so the electric signal from one neuron gets converted into a chemical which is chemical energy, which is the neurotransmitter, and then that gets reconverted into again electric energy and moves into the next neuron. Okay. Now let's look at the parts of the nervous system. So nervous system basically we know has the main part is the brain, then you have the spinal cord, and then you have the nerves. So the brain and the spinal cord together is known as the central nervous system, and the other nerves which are coming out of the brain or which are coming out of the spinal cord that is the nerves which are coming out of the spinal cord are known as spinal nerves. The one which are coming out of the brain are known as the cranial nerves. And then you have these ganglia or node-like structures, and then you also have another type of nerves which is known as visceral nerves, which are which arise either from the spine or the brain, and they connect to the internal organs. All these nerves together form the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is brain and spinal cord, and then all the other nerves form the peripheral nervous system. The other organs which help the nervous system are the sense organs. Right? Okay. Now let's look at the difference between the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. So cranial nerves generally originate from the brain and they terminate in the head and the upper body. Spinal nerves originate from the spine and they go on to the different parts of the body extending from below the head. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves and there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. And most of the cranial nerves have axons which can be either sensory, motor, or even mixed. Whereas in case of spinal nerves, the axons are generally of the mixed neuron types. Excuse me. Then let's look at the types of nervous system. Is it clear so far? I'm of course going to come back to your question about the muscles. That will come. There's time for it. But otherwise, so far, are there any questions? Okay, so let's proceed. So the nervous system has is of two types, as we saw, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is formed of the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is made up of all the nerves and all the sensory structures which are outside of the brain and the spinal cord. Now, this peripheral nervous system can again be classified into two types. One is the voluntary nervous system or the somatic nervous system, and the other is the autonomic nervous system or the involuntary nervous system. Voluntary means whatever is in our control. We can voluntarily act. So we can voluntarily control. Say, for example, the movement of our hands, what we are talking, the skeletal muscles, all these come under the somatic nervous system. Whereas the involuntary control of the glands and the other smooth muscles come under the autonomic nervous system. Okay. You cannot control how much of insulin will be produced in your body, right? So, or how much of thyroxine is going to be produced in your body. So, you cannot control all that. So, the activity of the glands or the smooth muscles are a part of the involuntary control or the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system again can be of two types. One is sympathetic and the other is parasympathetic. Sympathetic means when we are in a emergency situation, the fight or a flight situation, you know. So suddenly there is you're crossing a road and suddenly a car comes in. You are not thinking. Whatever has to happen, your body does it right away. Your heartbeat increases, you get startled, you try to walk fast and move away. All of those things happen automatically. So that part of it is the sympathetic nervous system. Whereas when you are resting, your digestion is improved. When you're relaxing, your mind is calm, and then you get thoughts in your mind and all that. That's also not in your control. But that's happening at a rest and a relaxing state. So that portion comes under the parasympathetic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system can be sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay. So the difference between the autonomic and so voluntary and involuntary nervous system, the pathway, the under different headings, let's see. The autonomic nervous system it involves only efferent pathway. That is, you don't have a control, so you are not sending anything. Whatever you need to do, that information comes from the central nervous system. So it just has to act. Whereas in case of somatic nervous system, you are thinking, you are deciding, and then you are moving your hand and legs. So there is both afferent and efferent pathway. So the movement is voluntary or conscious, whereas in case of autonomic nervous system, it is involuntary and not in our conscious control. The reflex action when is a part of somatic nervous system, whereas for example, some people can still hold a pain or can manage a pain for a longer period or for a higher intensities, because that comes under the somatic nervous system. And whereas say coughing, sneezing or vomiting, if it has to come, you cannot control it, so it comes under the autonomic nervous system. And even this the somatic nervous system, say whatever we are doing with our own consciousness, so that comes in here. So the neurotransmitters, which those chemicals, between the synapse, in case of the autonomic nervous system, it is acetylcholine, which functions as the neurotransmitter. Whereas in case of autonomic nervous system, it is acetylcholine as well as adrenaline and noradrenaline. So the adrenaline and noradrenaline are the hormones which are produced by the adrenal glands. So they also come in between, and they act as a neurotransmitter. Okay. Then the organs which are under our own control are our skeleton muscles, like the neck, arm, legs, shoulders, etc. And the autonomic nervous system takes care of all these other organs like heart, kidney, liver, stomach, intestine, lungs, etc., which is not in our direct control. Okay. And within the autonomic nervous system, we saw sympathetic and parasympathetic as the two types. Major characteristics of sympathetic nervous system: it dilates the pupil. Sympathetic, we said, right? It is when we are in an emergency situation, and parasympathetic is when we are in a restful situation. So when we are at an emergency situation, our eyelids our pupils become dilated because we want to see more. In case of a relaxed state, the pupil size is smaller. When we are scared, our mouth goes dry, because the sympathetic nervous system inhibits the salivary glands, whereas in relaxed state, it stimulates salivary glands. The heart rate gets accelerated during emergency. We've all experienced that. And in parasympathetic nervous system, when we're doing, say, meditation or something, the heart rate slows down. The bronchus gets dilated in case of sympathetic. It gets constricted in case of parasympathetic. So the glycogen in the body is converted to glucose so that we can get immediate energy during the emergency situation. Whereas a parasympathetic nervous system stimulates the stomach and intestine for releasing all the different digestive juices and bile, etc. Similarly, bladder contraction is stopped during this emergency action, and whereas bladder can be contracted when we are, relaxed. Now next, let's come to reflex action. Any questions? Okay, great. So you've already responded saying clear, ma'am. Fantastic. Okay. Coming to reflex action and reflex arc. Now, what is reflex action? It's the simplest form of response that happens in the nervous system. It is performed automatically when we are coming in contact with a stimulus. So in response to a stimulus, the simplest and the quickest form of response is the reflex action. Now, what is the difference between reflex action and reflex arc? Reflex arc is the pathway which is taken by the nerve impulse during the reflex action. So during reflex action, the nerve impulse does not go all the way to the brain. It takes a shortcut. It goes to the spinal cord. It receives its response from there and comes back to through the motor neuron using a shorter pathway. And that shorter pathway is the reflex arc. So if you have to define, then reflex arc is a route or a pathway taken by the nerve impulse in a reflex reaction. Reflex arc allows for more rapid response. So you can see here there's a hot pan, and as the hand touches it, the sensory neuron takes it, it goes to the spinal cord. The relay neuron relays the information, processes it, and then the motor neuron brings it back. Then there is an effector, which is the muscle in the arm, which will contract and the hand will move away. And during reflex action, the only thing that happens to the brain is that it just receives an information that, hey, look, something like this has happened. You don't need to do anything, but just be aware. That's it. Okay, so reflex arc mainly involves the spinal cord. And these kind of reflexes are known as spinal reflexes. In this case, as I said, the brain is only informed of the action. So most of our reflex action and reflex arc is of spinal type. However, there are some reflex actions which are also controlled by the brain, which are known as cerebral reflexes. For example, if you suddenly go into sun, you will see that the pupil will contract immediately and it will become small. So that contraction of pupil is not controlled by the spinal reflexes, it is controlled by the cerebral reflex, which is logically correct, because in the reflex action, what we are trying to do is we are going to reach the central nervous system, the nearest representation of the central nervous system, and come back with a response. So for the eye, the nearest one is the head. So it goes to the head and then comes back. So that is known as a cerebral reflex. Now this diagram is actually something I've taken from a book. It might be very difficult to draw this diagram in exam, especially if you don't have time, or those who are not very good at drawing and so on. You can always use this very simple line diagram because it conveys everything that is conveyed there in your other diagram. So you get the stimulus, the heat, it goes to the receptor, the heat detectors in the skin of the hand. The receptor will send it through the sensory neurons. It goes to the spinal cord. You can actually write it here about the relay neurons, which are present in the spinal cord where the processing happens, and then the motor neurons, which brings the signal back and gives it to the effector organ, which could be the muscles in the arm. And then the response that will happen is that the arm will get lifted away from the hot object. Okay. Great. Now muscle movement. So here comes the portion that you were requesting. So the muscles are made up of special cells. Okay. So the muscle cells, they contain a special protein, and this protein can change its shape. So that's the speciality. Now your nose or your heart or your fingers, they can't change their shape, right? But the muscles can. So they can change their orientation, they can change the arrangement, and that is because of this special protein. So the muscle cells contain a special protein, and this special protein helps in it changes its arrangement when it receives a stimulus or an electrical impulse. And this change in its arrangement, it causes the muscles to contract, or it causes the muscles to become small. So when the muscles contract, they become short. Like you can see, this is a full length muscle, as it's contracting, it's becoming thick here and it's becoming short. So when the muscle becomes short, it will pull the part to which it is attached. So these muscles are attached to the bone with the tendons. As this muscle will become short, it will pull. It will pull the tendon and that will pull the bone which is next to it. In this case, it is this hand bone. So the electrical impulse from the brain will make this bicep muscle to contract, which will pull the bone in the lower arm, and it will make the hand to move away from the heart plate and move towards the body. So that's how the muscle movement takes place. Is that clear? Just next. So that was your question. I hope I've been able to answer you. Okay. So that's the muscle movement. Now, next, let's come to brain. So, brain, we know, the main control system of the body. It is enclosed in a bony structure which is known as the skull. Skull basically provides protection to the brain. Skull is made up of 22 bones. 14 bones are in the facial bones and 8 bones are the cranial bones. So this brain is contained inside the cranium and it is surrounded by the cerebrospinal fluid. Now, what is the cerebrospinal fluid? It's a fluid which flows within the skull and in the spinal cord. It fills up all the hollow spaces, and it is in this fluid that the brain basically remains suspended. So brain is actually a very heavy part of the body, but because it is present inside this fluid, it feels light and we do not really feel the heavy weight of the brain on our body. And that also helps in actually not getting the oxygen cut off, because of the, if the brain were to actually feel very heavy and then get all the weight fall on the arteries which bring oxygen to it, it will find it difficult to get the required oxygen. So the cerebrospinal fluid also helps in keeping the brain floating. Okay. So you can see brain has forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. The cerebrum and the different lobes will come under the forebrain. Cerebellum, pons and medulla come under the hindbrain, and this portion is the midbrain. So the forebrain consists of cerebrum, hypothalamus and thalamus. These ones here. Midbrain is formed of tectum and tegmentum, and hindbrain is formed of cerebellum, medulla and pons. Yeah. Now let's look at the different functions. The forebrain is the main thinking part of our brain. So the different cerebral hemispheres and that is where our voluntary action, our intelligence, all of that lies. So the cerebrum here, and then you have the different lobes which are present in the cerebrum. The olfactory lobe, it helps in the smell. The diencephalon, it helps in managing the feelings of hunger and thirst. And then there are different motor areas which instruct the muscles to do different jobs. So depending on which sense organ is actually or which part of the body needs to be acted upon, the motor areas will send the signal. So when we are saying, right, that from the sense organ the stimulus is the impulse is sent to the brain and it gets processed in the brain, it is basically in these motor areas where it gets processed, and then the motor areas will send a response to the effectors. Then so all your thinking abilities, your intelligence, your memory, your um, your sense for hunger, your responses, all these things are controlled by the forebrain. So that's why we say it is the main part, and a lot of voluntary activities are taken care in the cerebrum. Okay, and even previous experiences. So the intelligence part of it, whatever experiences we had, we our brain recalls that experience. We use that information in our next action. The decision for taking for what is right, what is wrong. All these things happen in the forebrain. Okay. Then the midbrain. Midbrain controls the reflex movements in the head, the neck, and the trunk, and whatever mainly with response to the visual and the auditory stimuli. So based on the stimulus that we received from the eye and the ears, the response that the head, neck, or trunk has to do, those things are controlled by the midbrain. So the change of the pupil size, the change of the eye lens, shape of the eye lens, the movement of the eye muscles, all these things are taken care by the midbrain. Then in the hindbrain, you have three parts: pons, cerebellum, and medulla. Pons regulates the respiration. It also relays information between cerebrum and cerebellum. So it connects and sends the information from cerebrum and cerebellum. Then you have cerebellum. Cerebellum maintains the posture and balance in the body, and it enables to make precise and accurate movements. So your when you are walking, when you are dancing, you're skating, you're driving, so those precise movements, precise actions, and balancing yourself, that is the role of the cerebellum. So when people drink, it is the cerebellum which basically gets affected, and that is why they are not steady, and then they are not able to balance themselves and so on. Then the next one is medulla. So medulla controls involuntary actions like breathing, and then these other reflexes like swallowing, vomiting, coughing, etc. It controls the heartbeat, it controls blood pressure, it controls the movement of the alimentary canal. So all those things are managed by the medulla. So if you find it difficult to remember, pons, it starts with P. Respiration starts with R, so PQR. Similarly, relaying information, R just comes after P. So pons and R are related. Cerebellum, this bellum kind of rhymes with the balance. So you're balancing, and then all these posture, balancing, the accurate movements, all this comes under cerebellum. Medulla is like all these middle things, uh, swallowing, coughing, um, blood pressure, breathing, blood circulation, heartbeat. So all those things which are happening in the middle portion of your body, those things are controlled by medulla. It's only for you, for the ease of remembering, because sometimes I've seen people get confused, especially cerebrum and cerebellum. People do get confused. Cerebrum is all your high-end activities: thinking, intelligence, remembering, recalling, expressing yourself, voluntary actions, smell, thirst, hunger, your muscular movements. All those things, all the voluntary things will come under forebrain. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation, ma'am. It was really helpful. Great. Thank you. I'm happy, when people respond and when people are interactive and they find value, basically. The idea is to give you value through these sessions, right? Then the last one is the spinal cord. Spinal cord is the tube-like cylindrical structure which continues from the medulla and it extends downwards through the vertebral column. So it's that cord of nerves which extends from the medulla and goes into the vertebral column. And vertebral column is the bony structure which protects uh, the nerves inside the spinal cord. And spinal cord is also surrounded by membranes which are known as meninges. And there are 31 pairs of nerves which arise from the spinal cord. So those are your spinal nerves. And what is the function of the spinal cord? It will help in spinal reflex and also for conduction of nerve impulses. So it transmits the nerve impulses and the responses from the brain to the different parts of the body and from the body to the brain. So that's its main function, right? So with that, we are kind of coming to an end of our portion. We have covered it more quicker than what I expected it to go on. So I can release you early unless you have a lot of questions. So let's have a Q&A. Any doubts, queries, questions? Okay. You still have time by the time I close it. If you have any questions, you can type and I'll take it once again. But otherwise, those of you who are new, please do subscribe to the channel and go back and check the material there in the channel. You'll find a lot of interesting study material. You'll find a lot of productivity enhancement tools that you can use. There are NCERT in chapter and textbook exercises, a lot of assertion and reasoning questions. All of these have been solved, and while along with the solution, the explanation is also there. So it's not just merely solution. You will have the explanation to understand why those answers are right. And those who are not a part of the WhatsApp group, we also have a Geology WhatsApp group, which you can make use of to ask questions to me directly and get the answers free of cost, absolutely. And there are other students there from different schools, different universities, different places. You'll find it interesting to interact with them in your query. So in the description, I will be giving the link to the WhatsApp group. So those of you who are not a part of the group and want to be into it can go in and click the link and join the group. Right. I don't see any new questions anymore. So I think I will call it a day today. And thank you so much for being a part of this session. It was great interacting, and wish you all the best for your upcoming exams. I will again come back with another live session soon, wherein we're going to look at the next topic. Those of you who are in the WhatsApp group, you can propose which topic do you want me to take up, and I shall take it. Otherwise, I'll come back with something that I feel like. Right? So thank you so much, and good night. Wish you all the very best. Bye bye.